Radio Manchester on 95.1.
Wow, wow, I done told you. Wow, wow, early in the morning. Wow, wow, don't you hear them? Wow, wow, whistle blowing. Wow, 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 wow. Change, 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 change. My mother's on that train, bound for glory. My mother's on that train, bound for glory. I know my mother's on that train, I know, bound for glory. Now don't you? I done told you, hear them, great God Almighty, whistle early in the morning, blowing, oh Lord of mercy, wow, 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 wow. Change, 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 my father's on that train. I know my father's on that train. Have mercy, Lord, bound for glory. I know my father's on that train. That train, I mean, bound for glory. Now don't you? I done told you, hear them, great God Almighty, whistle early in the morning, blowing, oh Lord of mercy, wow, 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 wow. Change, 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 yes, we're gonna ride that train. That train, I know, bound for glory. Now we're gonna ride that train. Have mercy, Lord, bound for glory. Now we're gonna ride that train. That train, I mean, bound for glory. Now don't you? I done told you, hear them, great God Almighty, whistles early in the morning, blowing, oh Lord of mercy, wow. All aboard. Wow. Ticket. Wow. New Orleans.
You are in tune to the people here on BBC Radio Manchester with myself, Mr. V, and Karen Gabay. We're going to be taking you through to the hours of 10 o'clock this evening. Well, you just heard two tracks in a row. The first one was courtesy of Imagination. Yes, remember Imagination from back in the day? Well, they're apparently going to be back soon. The track we heard was Just My Imagination.
Yeah, that was just an illusion from Imagination there, and they will be touring in October, so look out for them. They will be appearing live in Manchester. And then you heard a wonderful track that was recorded back in 1949 by the Jackson Gospel Singers. The track was Heaven Bound Train, and if you love rare soul, gospel, just like that, and good old rhythm and blues, then you'll thoroughly enjoy a new series of CD compilations that are being released by two music lovers. The series is called History of Soul, and they've been lovingly put together by Stewart, Tippett and Nick Duckett. Now, Nick picks up on how they came together to put this compilation in place.
I was between jobs, shall we say, looking around for something to do, and I was wandering into a record shop, and I thought, you know what I'd really like? I'd like a history of rhythm and blues. So I went thumbing through one of the big shops in London, and I couldn't find one, and I went up to the counter and I said, have you got a big history of rhythm and blues? No, sorry. And I suddenly thought, well, why don't I do one? And I rang up my chum Stewart, and we had a chat, and it all came from there.
So have you both got a very large record collection, to take it?
Yes.
You could say that, yes.
Yes, I collect, yes, very much so. I also collect sheet music, posters, all any artefact to do with music, you know, especially soul, blues, etc. I'm also very interested in blaxploitation films as well, and also studied Afro-American history. and American history and politics, so that kind of
So it all
wraps it all up, you know. Funny enough, we met at the Victoria and Albert Museum, didn't we?
Didn't we?
To
Yeah.
discuss it. There was some Art Nouveau exhibition on there to discuss it, and I kind of got involved part-time, didn't I, really? Once Nick got that up and running, I'd always had it on my mind to do a history of soul, and we discussed it for some time, and we'd done quite a bit of research, and we thought that it hadn't really been done very well. And that people, and even though there were interesting compilations musically, there was no narrative. There was nothing about the evolution, and they only went back to about 1959, 1960. So we decided that it would be a good thing to go back and look at the gospel side of things, because we felt that that had been neglected.
It always stops, doesn't it, at certain points, doesn't it, when they
That's
talk
right,
about kind of black music?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's only to the very kind of like elite, should we say, that are able to take you back, further back in time. Is
That's
that what-
very kind of
yeah?
you.
It's true. It's true, though, isn't it?
Very much so. Well, it's interesting. I suppose it's difficult to say, but there was always this separation, this sort of spiritual, secular separation with gospel and the secular, the devil's music, etc., etc. I think mainstream society picked up on that as well. Maybe religion doesn't sell well, etc. So I think that's why you've had this sort of, I don't know, cleavage between the two. But the thing is, you can't really think of soul because it's secular gospel, so it's
Yeah.
the same thing.
I think what we've done that's maybe a little bit different is we've tried to marry the blues to the gospel. So we've put them side to side, which it might sound a bit controversial sometimes when you put, say, Mahalia Jackson next to a rocking track by Roy Brown, but we feel it works. Because
Yeah, so
Actually,
go on.
you know,
Billy Wright.
was it Billy Wright?
Yeah, because Billy Wright was gay as well, and a major influence on Little Richard, and it was an interesting
But
pairing.
if you put them side to side, you can hear that they're both coming from the same source. They're using different elements, but they're both singing from the same hymn book, as they say.
Very much
yeah.
so.
Yeah, it's just the path, isn't it, that as well that people took back then as well. You know, like for instance with Sister Rosetta, it's the path that they took musically, but most were coming from the church, weren't they?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Most
Very
were
much
coming,
so,
yeah.
yes.
Even the rhythm and blues singers,
Yeah.
they all started in the church.
All started in the church. And I'm talking of Sister Rosetta, I mean, what a pioneer, probably one of the first rock and roll guitarists, bisexual sapphic relationship with Marie Knight for some time, sang with the big bands and sang in church. I mean, she was really, really special, and it's only recently that she started to get her due, really. Isn't
Yeah,
it? You know?
exactly, yeah.
She's
That's
such an important person.
that footage that we see is rooted in Manchester, isn't it? It's
That's right.
Sister Rosetta on the train
Yes,
going through
yes.
Fallowfield, isn't it?
That's
In
it, yeah.
Manchester.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you two guys who spent their evenings and weekends reminiscing about music and chatting about your music collection?
In pubs, mainly.
Mainly in pubs and, I don't know, record fairs, whatever.
Record shops.
Yeah, I tend to irritate my family. Most people I know talking about music, I tend to skew the conversation. But all my children, anyway, are almost imbued with it.
When he's not talking about politics, of course.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Well, yes, that's another factor. Nick and I have always discussed what the type of music we like, but also we like the history of it and the politics of it. The thing with the series is that, the historical and political context is there as well, because if you look at the introductions, they're 1,500-word introductions, and if you join them together after the 8 volumes, you've got a complete narrative. Hopefully it will be as accurate as possible as well, which really gives you a good basis of the evolution of soul music and all those ingredients that went into it, and really highlights the people from the church, from those Pentecostal churches that really helped create that music. There'll be some few names there that are getting their just desserts.
Yeah, it'll give a real context. Now, one of your chronology of the gospel ones, Wade in the Water, but one that's going to be, well, it's particularly poignant for this year. I know a lot of Americans who were political and music commentators have mentioned this. 50 years since Martin Luther King's speech, a lot of 50-year anniversary of civil rights movement, or the breakthrough of civil rights. And and one of your compilations is "Save a Seat for Me." Great title. So, in terms of the selection of artists that go with this particular era, why have you picked? Like, say, for instance, I'll pick out some names. Robert Anderson, why is he on there?
It's the strength of the civil rights movement is about the church. Martin Luther King was a Baptist, yeah, and it's the church really that coordinates the civil rights movement. Save a Seat for me, as you know, is Five Blind Boys of Mississippi track, but it's also, if you look at the year that we're doing, that is the year that Rosa Parks won't give a seat up, the start of the Montgomery bus boycott, etc. I mean, and it's the year after Emmett Till as well. So we thought it was apt and the right thing to do to actually represent Rosa Parks with the evolution of soul music, because you'll find that as civil rights gains its momentum, the music changes, and especially the lyrics change, especially as you move on a bit further with, keep on pushing, move on up, etc., etc. So that to me is a sort of part of the catalyst of the mood and the lyrics of changing towards soul music.
And that was Stewart Tippett talking there alongside Nick Duckett. And as mentioned, they've done a great series of CD compilations, historical compilations called The History of